Hi, Mike here. Today I'm going to be doing a tier list for all of the best referees in MMA at the moment from D tier to S tier. S tier being the best referees and the D tier being the worst. But let's start off with the first one. One of the more popular referees out of England. We've got Marc Goddard. I'm actually going to put him in the A tier. I think that that's probably an unpopular opinion. One thing I will say though is Marc Goddard's got like two alter egos. He's got title fight Marc Goddard, who's like trigger happy and looking to step in at any moment possible. And then we've got like early prelim opener Marc Goddard, who is the better version. But a couple of things I'll say about Marc is that he's actually pretty good with separation. Some referees, you'll see him like let them just sit against the cage, just doing absolutely nothing. Marc will actually usher you through those moments. He was the one separating DDP versus Hamzat. Although I don't think the times he separated were the best, I still think that was a fight that should have been separated, and some refs I know for a fact would not have done that. But he also has some good calls. People talk about the Adesanya versus Pereira fight being a bad call. I think that that's a perfect stoppage. Even my dad, who that's one of the first and only fights he's ever watched a part of, he walked into the room when that fight was going on as the finish was happening, and he said, "Come on, man, go down." And even then, when I was watching that, I did also think the same thing. Pereira was about to flatline KO Izzy. Izzy was literally like falling over against the cage. He was leaning forward really far, very close to Pereira. Although some people may just want to see Izzy get flatline KO'd. If you're going to be a proper ref, that's actually not a bad time to step in. Just because he's leaning so far forward, getting teed off on, he's already been dropped a second before. And he's ripe for that flying knee, ripe for anything really powerful is probably just going to hit him. And the thing is, another good thing about Marc Goddard is that when it gets to the point of stopping a fight, he's usually quite good at getting in there quite early. He's not the type of guy who's going to be hobbling over really late. He sprints in there, he's quite athletic, he's quite fast, and he can rip anyone off on top of someone. So like, you know, the position where someone's on top and they're ground and pounding someone out to a TKO win. Marc Goddard's very good at lifting them and just dragging them off the opposition and really controlling whoever needs the fight to be stopped. He's very, very good at that. And he also does control the octagon very well. He's very loud, very good at just like yelling at people and getting them under control. But that leads into his negatives. Sometimes he's super aggressive. Everyone's seen the Cedric Doumbé thing where he's walking up to him screaming. Then there's other times where he's just super aggressive for no reason, just in the middle of the fight, in just where he's giving instructions. Sometimes he's very aggressive. And then he also inserts himself into so many situations. And I don't like that part of him. But another thing that I don't like, part of like inserting himself, this is kind of like an unreasonable reason not to like him. But I hate that stupid smirk and stance that he does before every fight. He's holding up against the cage, looking all zest. And then he's just like looking straight at the camera. That is a bit unenjoyable for me to look at. And he also beefs with fighters randomly, like in the DC versus Stipe fight. He told DC that he just didn't get eye poked when Stipe's finger went knuckle deep into DC's eye. And then Colby, in the Usman versus Colby fight, Usman fouls Colby like 6 times, and then Colby does it back once, and then doesn't get any sort of timeout. And then again, when I'm talking about title fight, Marc Goddard stepping in early, Yuri versus Pereira, number 1, obviously not number 2, but there are a couple of stoppages similar to that, but that's not the worst. I'd rather people have early stoppages rather than late. I do much prefer that from Marc Goddard, but let's move on to the next ref, probably the coolest looking ref out there. We got Mike Beltran. He's in the B tier for me. Mike is good. He is actually pretty good, and I don't think that there's too much bad that you can say about Mike Beltran. He's very firm. He's good with stopping fights. He does lift the opponents off very well. He's a big guy. He controls the octagon quite well. He's not as in your face as Marc Goddard. But the thing is that he's a lot worse with separations and fouls than Marc. He's not good. As soon as someone's stalling, he'll let you stay there forever. And if you actually do a foul, he'll give you about 10 of the harshest warnings ever. Even the commentators always talk about this, how they always talk about how Mike Beltran gives the harshest warnings, but it's just him yelling at a fighter and they're sitting there smirking, knowing they're not going to get a point taken off. He was the one that refereed the Aldo versus Bautista fight, needed to separate that one, and that is a chronic issue with Mike Beltran. He doesn't separate fights quick enough. And then he's also really bad with just general fouls. Like the eye poke moment with Gaethje versus Chandler didn't jump in there quick enough. And then he had a shitter in the Asu Almabayev versus Manel Cap fight where he was calling eye pokes that weren't there and then didn't actually call the eye pokes that came up to the finishing sequence. And then even then, there was the moment in the Trey Ogden versus Nicholas Motta fight where Motta's caught in an arm triangle and then he thinks that Motta's tapped for absolutely no reason and then calls off the fight. But then again, that's a handful of moments. I will say his separating from stalling positions is one of the worst, and that's what brings him down from A tier, but he's a pretty good ref all in all. Moving on to the next one, we've got one of the refs that's going through a bit of a transformation at the moment. Don't know if you've seen it, it's quite concerning, but we've got Keith Peterson. If you look at this photo here, he looks a lot slimmer than that now. He looks concerningly slim, but Keith Peterson's a good ref. He's quite a smart ref, actually. I would say he's quite crafty with noticing the cage grabs and that sort of stuff, and he doesn't inject himself randomly at all. But we all know the booze and cigarettes. Keith Peterson, he's had his beef with multiple fighters before due to stopping fights early. He is definitely an early stopper more than a late. And he also has the issue where he's not the strongest referee out there. And sometimes, because of that lack of strength, he lets a few extra unneeded shots go through. And he's not that imposing. People don't really know when Keith Peterson's coming in to step in. Whereas Marc Goddard, you can feel his presence, I bet, when he's breathing down your neck, ready to rip you off your opponent. Moving on to the next one. Oh, hope you didn't see that. But we got Chris Tognoni. I'm going to have to move this up a little bit. Oh no. All right, Chris Tognoni. I'm going to put him in the C tier. Chris is a little bit of a crafty one. I will say that he's very good at catching the fence grabs, glove grabs, hooking your toes in the cage. I think that that's kind of the only thing Chris Tognoni is looking for, to be honest, because he's so good at finding them. You'll see someone with their pinky toe hooked up against the bottom of the cage and it's covered, and he'll somehow know to step in there and pull that toe away. But he doesn't actually look at any other fouls apart from that. He doesn't stop fights apart from that. You will never notice him stopping any fouls. And Tognoni is owner of the worst moment in UFC reffing history. Steve Herzog sleeps Matt Schnell out cold. And I don't think it was UFC Vegas something. It was in the Apex. And Schnell gets slept really badly. Smacks his head off the canvas. It was a beautiful left hook finish from Steve Herzog. But then Chris Tognoni is coming in with the most comedic moment after a fight, and he's sitting there holding Matt Schnell's arm, whispering to him, and he's like, I'm not sure what's worse, the punch or you smacking your head off the canvas. You'll see it on film after this. And it's Chris, whoa, he's just been flatline KO'd. Why are you saying this to him? Weird moments from Chris. He seems like he's autistic. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. But his mannerisms lead me to believe that that's true. But Chris is very slow as well. His positioning does make up for it, but he is super slow. You'll see him just sprinting in last minute, really, really late. And that is the Chris Tognoni special. He always does that. Moving on to the next one. We got Kerry Hatley. He is probably the least well-known on this list, but I'm going to be putting him in the C tier as well. He's actually pretty good. There's all of these refs I've noticed have a couple of things that they're quite good at. Kerry Hatley is really good at getting the doctors in on time. If you remember the Melendez versus Sanchez fight, it was a very scrappy, messy fight. Never really got in the way of the action, and he is really great at getting the doctors in without causing too much of a ruckus or stopping too much into the play. But then again, the reason why he's in the C tier is that he's owner of the worst stoppage in UFC history, which is Bobby Green versus Jalen Turner, where Jalen Turner sleeps Bobby Green out cold and then lands about 22 follow-up shots, maybe 22 to 30 follow-up shots, where he's just out cold. And no one watching that thinks that Green is fighting back. It is the worst stoppage I've ever seen in my entire life. And another thing about Curry Hatley is that he has literally no octagon presence. He looks like he's halfway out the cage. You don't even notice him in there. You don't hear him in there. And he just does things very slowly, very similar to Chris Tognoni out there. Moving on to another ref out there, we got Marc Smith. One of the better refs out there. I actually will admit that. I think he's not good enough to be S tier, but he's a good A tier. He's a very good ref. He has one of the most intense stoppings of the fight. Stop, stop, stop! Stop, stop, stop! Every time I guarantee you, you're going to hear that. Every single time. Marc Smith will never let you down with that. He's the most dramatic when ending a fight. Someone could be like one shot to the finish and he's just ripping them off. He's ready to beat them up himself. He's really intense when it comes to stopping the fights. But hey, I like that. I like it when these guys don't take too much extra damage. But the thing that brings Marc down from being an S tier ref is he just gives you as many warnings as you need. You don't get a point taken off by Marc Smith. You should take all of your... You can get 3 eye pokes from Marc Smith. You can get 3 nut shots from Marc Smith. You can grab the cage twice. You can hook the glove 3 times. Marc doesn't care. He doesn't call fouls. He gives you so many warnings. And even then, I made fun of Mike Beltran's like fake hardcore like warnings. Marc Smith doesn't even give them. So at least Mike Beltran's doing that. But Marc Smith is a very good ref, though. I will give him that. He's very, very, very good. He doesn't inject himself when he's not needed. He's very, very good. But I have heard that apparently a lot of the fighters don't like being refed by him, especially at Extreme Couture. Moving on to the next one, though, we've got the most famous ref, the only person, well, one of the only people followed by KFC. We got Herb Dean, and he's going in the D tier. I'm sorry, Herb. You are my favorite ref, but probably for all of the wrong reasons. And the thing is that Herb Dean's just known to be the guy for all of the bad stoppages. But the thing is that people bring up like the Askren versus Lawler as being one of the bad stoppages. And honestly, it's not actually that bad when you look back at it. And one thing I will say, Herb Dean reffing a title fight, A tier. Just because, or A tier or S tier. Just because title fights, I think, I just like letting him die. I don't like letting him die, but I hate early stoppages in title fights. And I'd rather someone just get slept out cold in a title fight. And Herb Dean is the embodiment of that. Everyone knows it's Herb. If he dies Dean. And he's always going to be that. He has the worst positioning out of any ref. He's basically standing in the crowd. And he's just had so many blunders. I don't know of a ref that's had more blunders. I actually tried to put him in the C tier, but then realized that there's genuinely not a ref that's had more instances than Herb Dean. Think of the RoboCop versus Hermanson fight. That's not even one that he caught much flack for. And then, like, the Weidman versus Rockhold fight took, like, 400 extra shots. It wasn't actually that much, but it was a lot of extra shots. And then, what about the Cerrone versus Masvidal fight? Cerrone gets slept out cold in the first round, basically at the end of the round, and then comes back out for the second round. And then also there's moments like the Ortega-Volk fight. I'm sure we've all seen the clip where he's showing Ortega, he's like, follow my eyes, and Ortega's just like unable to look at him. Or he's like, how many fingers am I holding up? 2? How many fingers am I holding up? 2? How many fingers am I holding up? 2? That was literally the extent of the reffing that he did in the Ortega-Volk fight. He is just going to let you take as much damage as possible. It almost seems like he's just out there to enjoy the spectacle. But let's move on to the next one. We've got Dan Miragliotta. Sorry, you're going to have to join Herb Dean in the D tier. Dan's only redeeming factor is that he's superimposing and he can rip someone off someone else when he's stopping a fight. Everything bad I've said about any other ref, Dan does it. He's probably the worst ref in the UFC. He's going to give you all the warnings in the world. And one thing is that, you know how I said that all these refs are good at something? Dan is terrible at one specific thing, and it's been shown in the UFC Vancouver card over the weekend. He does not know when to stop a fight at the end of the round. I've never seen someone have such an inability to do that. Remember Rob Font versus David Martinez? David Martinez at the end of the fight almost just sleeps Rob Font out cold for like 4 seconds after the fight bell has gone. Like 4 or 5 seconds, he's ground and pounding him once the fight's finished. Doesn't stop it. Then when we look at Polyana Viana versus Jacqueline Amorim, stops that fight like 10 seconds before the bell. Same thing on the exact same card with Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. Stops it again 10 seconds before the bell. And then the most recent weekend, we got Frivola versus Nelson. When Frivola gets slept out cold at the end of the fight, at the end of the first round, and then Miragliotta stops it 3 seconds early and then brings him out to a second. I mean, you stop the fight. You can't keep it going. And I've never seen a ref do the same mistake hundreds of times unless it's Herb Dean with his positioning. But Dan Miragliotta, time and time again, can't figure out 10 seconds at the end of the round. So easily he has to be in the D tier. Moving on to the last ref I was going to talk about. We got Jason Herzog, the best ref in the game, easily. I can only think of like 2 bad moments from him, and it was the Imavov versus Cannonier fight, and he even tweeted straight after that apologizing, saying he was going to reevaluate. We never see that out of any of these other refs. But it was only the Yizar versus Muhammad Yahya fight as well, where Muhammad Yahya got dropped like 100 times in the first round, and Jason Herzog didn't stop the fight in that one. He should have stopped that one, and then he missed Gaethje tapping to the triangle against Habib. Definitely should have stopped that one, but if I'm pulling up 3 moments, and that's in total, I genuinely cannot think of any other moments. Let me know if you find one in the comment section below. I'd actually like to see it. But he's the most consistent. If I see him, Herzog out there, I know that there's going to be some good officiating done in that fight. I just know it. I know for a fact. He is one of the best refs, and he's probably the best ref behind John McCarthy just due to legacy. And he knows Brazilian Portuguese. He's pulling out all stops. He's a fantastic ref. Never injects himself when it's not needed. And he's one of the people as well that I always hear talking to John McCarthy, talking to Michael Bisping about stoppages, where people will accuse him of an early stoppage, and he's instantly asking around, trying to learn more. I genuinely think Herzog is the best ref in the game. Let me know what you think of this tier list in the comment section below. Where would you put all of these guys? As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and a comment, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.